Program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. What do you suppose might happen if some ordinary citizens from labor groups and churches and community centers all banded together and showed that they had serious concerns about, say, transportation or about housing? Could they really do anything? Could they fight big money? Could they affect the government? Could they make real changes in how we live? Could they even change our expectations? Well, let's find out, because that's exactly what a group of people have done. They've formed an organization called METRO VANCOUVER ALLIANCE, and one of the people who's one of the, I'd say, forming agents is here with us, Carlos Moreira, a former city bus driver, but now, what are you, Vice President? President?
That's correct.
El Presidente
Vice President.
El Vice Presidente of what? Union?
UNIFOR 111.
Very good, okay.
We were formerly known as Canadian Auto Workers.
Ah,
So-
you broke from Canadian Auto Workers?
No,
You just renamed.
They merged with CEP.
Oh, so
and
got
they
even
formed UNIFOR.
bigger and stronger.
Right, so
Very
exactly.
good, very good. All right. So, Metro Vancouver Alliance, what is it? Who is it?
Well, basically, the intention has been and still is to create a broad-based organization, community-based,
Yes.
to start basically building power at the civic arena to provoke positive changes in the issues that you just mentioned.
Yes. Housing, transit.
We have 4 issues: transit, housing, poverty, and social isolation.
Yeah, let's hold on isolation for a minute, because that's a very subtle issue. When I look at the first line of one of your releases, I'll just read it, a big question comes up. Metro Vancouver Alliance is a group of nonpartisan, proactive, engaged citizens dedicated to making the Lower Mainland a better place for all to live and thrive.
Right.
The obvious question is how? How are you going to pull this off?
Well, basically, we're halfway there.
Yes.
We originally, from a small group of people that started to develop this idea,
Yes.
to where we are now after the foundation, we are about 40 institutions that made up the Metro Vancouver Alliance.
Wow.
And how we come together is, and the bonding is based not on issues that we have identified, but basically by establishing relationship among the membership of these institutions. So
Yes.
we talk to one another, we have face-to-face meetings with the intention of finding common issues that affect us all, and that we will basically work together and trying to solve them to benefit communities.
So
in
I'm
which we
seeing,
live.
just a quick hit list, I'm seeing a lot of labor people, CUPE, your group, UNIFOR, United Food, International Longshore, who've been very much, too much in the news lately. Thank goodness that's getting settled. Public service and so on, hospital employees, community groups. You've got neighborhood houses, which is great.
Yes.
Community college, CAP, University School of Communication, Carnegie, all kinds of people. You've got a lot of faith groups, Baptists, Downtown Eastside Catholic parishes, Lutherans, Our Lady of practically everybody.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing Jews. Where are the Jews? Other than the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, I'm not seeing a synagogue here. You better get them involved.
Yes, and it's a work in progress, as I
Yes.
said earlier. So there is also, as you may notice there, we
Yes.
have been taking steps to bring in the Sikh
Yes,
church. The
yes. I
community.
was going to say Sikhs. You need Muslims. You need everybody.
Yes, and there are individual observers to the alliance from
Yes.
those faith organizations that are finding out what the alliance is and how it works, so that they go back to their institution and trying to talk to the leadership.
Whoever you may have, you're now representing over 200,000 people.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's the power that will ensure and guarantee that the agenda that we have developed is going to be pushed forward.
So you had a big, was it a big inaugural meeting just the other day?
That's right. On March 19th, that was the founding assembly of the alliance.
Aha.
Over 600 people packed the Maritime Labor Center. In fact, we had to turn people away.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. How did it go?
Well, excellent. We
Yes.
have heard nothing but positive comments from people that attended, people who have heard about what happened that evening, and some institutions and community groups that also are now inquiring as to how they can get involved. It was a very inspiring evening.
So how
to
are
be
you
part of.
going to follow this up? How are you going to start? Because you've got all these different people, and everybody has, in a sense, their own agenda, and everybody has their own frustrations.
Yes.
You know, community development is a very subtle piece of work.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that the Metro Vancouver Alliance follows a methodology of organizing that was developed almost 70 years ago in the United States.
And it's all over the world.
Exactly.
What's it
And
called?
now it spans the Canada, the US,
Yes,
UK, Germany,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Australia.
yeah.
And in the United States, it's known as the Industrial Areas Foundation.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So, and they are in about 50 or so cities and states in the United States. And of course, Metro Vancouver Alliance is one of the first groups that bring that model into Vancouver. So this model is based on building relationships and finding out what is the common issues that affect most of the membership of these institutions. So for the last 7 months, we were engaged in what we call listening campaign. So we had thousands of conversations asking members of these institutions as to what are the issues that they're facing at home,
Yes.
in their communities, in the workplace.
So let's take the first issue. What kinds of things were you hearing about housing?
Well, the concern in housing is that there is still too many homeless people out there. There is still and the number of seniors who are living at or below the poverty line.
Yes.
Housing has become too expensive for them to afford, and it is creating a problem that it needs to be addressed. And politicians need to be paying more attention and putting more resources into
And for middle-class seniors, the issue has become house rich, property rich, cash poor. So you got all these middle-class people like me who feel they have to sell whatever they own and find less expensive accommodation because their biggest investment has been their home.
And perhaps abandon the neighborhood where you have your roots, right? You
Exactly.
had to move to the suburbs because living in the city has become unaffordable for people who, up to now, have been enjoying the benefits of being in the middle class.
Have you noticed in your first listening groups over the last few months and at this big inaugural session the other day, are you getting some young people involved? Are you getting people in their teens and 20s?
Absolutely, and that is what is inspiring about this model is that youth have embraced it because they see that building power is the only way that we are going to bring about social changes that are needed. And we have there, the Jewish group, and many unions are basically focusing on bringing in the young workers.
Deborah Lippman, who's one of the lead organizers for your organization, says, quote, community organizations like Metro Vancouver Alliance operate on the principle of power before program. Right. Now that struck me because the great, most famous community organizer in North American history was a man named Saul Alinsky. And Alinsky, operating out of Chicago, but doing many things all over America, and also he came to Canada to advise people here. He had a principle, and the principle went like this. Power will not change until you show it that it'll cost more for it to not change.
Absolutely, and we are following the model of Saul Alinsky.
Yes.
That's picked up by the Industrial Area Foundations, and that's the principle that we are establishing in Vancouver, and that's why we are so confident that it will work.
So we have these interesting things happen that seem almost beyond the control of ordinary people. They seem to be in the hands of the largest developers. We have these, and it ties into what you're so familiar with. We have these new transit lines. You know, we have Canada Line and so on, the Evergreen Line building out to Coquitlam, and these become pods of commerce and also of residency. Right? Every time there's a stop, well, this is a great place to put up 4 high-rises, and so on, okay? But I'm not making that decision. That decision is being made by Mr. Big Bucks, who is in sort of collusion with City Hall or Burnaby City Hall or whoever the City Hall is.
Yeah, gentrification is a big problem.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. The SkyTrans corridor has become,
Yes.
It's obvious now throughout
Sure.
the city that gentrification is an issue that needs to be addressed as a problem for a lot of neighborhoods in this.
And often not a terrible thing.
No.
But the issue is, how does it happen and who has access to new housing?
Yes, and so to answer your original question, that is why is it so important to organize and to build power?
Yes.
Because if, as you know, and your viewers will agree to, is that oftentimes a lot of coalitions spring up.
Yes.
With, hey, let's work for this issue, let's solve this problem. But they don't have the support of the membership of those institutions that form, and those coalitions usually fade out.
Yeah, they're an ad hoc thing.
Because they haven't built that power.
Yes, and
that
they
you need to
have a momentary passion, and then when that issue is gone, so are they.
Yes.
By and large.
So we are the opposite. We start by building the relationship with our members,
Yes.
listening to them, and develop the agenda, which is our common agenda. So after thousands and thousands of conversations,
Yes.
we had to discern, which we did on March 3rd, and prioritized the main issues, which those were the 4 issues that we came up with.
Just repeat them, because we're going to go to break in a minute. Housing?
Housing,
Yes.
poverty, public transit, and social isolation.
Yeah.
So that is the agenda of the 200,000 members that make up the Metro Vancouver Alliance.
Yeah.
That ensures that when we call upon them to take an action in front of civic politicians, they will be there because those are their issues.
You know, today I got in the mail a request for a donation from MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I'm not a rich guy, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to send them a small check. And I'm also going to send them a note and say, I believe that MAD is one of the greatest examples of grassroots people saying there's an issue, we've got to do something about it, and affecting social change. I don't know anybody in Canada or North America who's had such an impact on drinking and driving and on seat belts and so on, and then MAD.
Absolutely.
And they're just, mothers. Mothers against drunk driving.
Well, mom's rule, right?
Yeah. Mom's always rule.
We always listen to mom.
Listen, my mom is secretly yelling that I have to take a break, so we're gonna do that. I never disobey. So we'll just take a little breather here, folks. Give you a chance to go to our website, davidberner.com. We always welcome your comments and thoughts, and also an opportunity for those lovely people who support us here to say hello on this program on Shaw Community Television. Back in just a moment with our guest, Carlos Moreira. Yeah, lovely. Excellent. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. Well, those of you who are the masters of the universe, you better be careful because there's a new player in town. It's called METRO VANCOUVER ALLIANCE, representing now over 200,000 people from faith groups and community organizations and unions and so on. And these folks have a serious agenda. They want to affect some change in some very important areas in our lives here in the Lower Mainland. And one of the key organizers is Carlos Moreira, who is it called UNIFOR?
UNIFOR 111.
UNIFOR 111.
Local 111.
Local 111, Union of Bus Drivers.
That's right.
Yes,
we
yes.
represent the Metro.
Just bus drivers or of transit workers?
Bus drivers, and UNIFOR 2200 represents mechanics and maintenance.
Yeah. By the way, I have to tell you, as a sidebar to nothing, but for the first time, I finally took a Canada Line trip. I have no need to, but just for fun, I did recently. I loved it. It's sensational.
Yes.
Fabulous.
No, those projects, well, we have to embrace them because they're here now.
Yeah.
And projects that have been developed look into the future. Vancouver is growing. We will have 1 more million people here within the next 3 decades.
Yeah.
That means 700,000 more vehicles. Yeah. So public transit is crucial for the future of this area. And our members put it on the agenda.
I just took a test drive in an electric smart car, and I think we have to get the bicycle mayor to change his tune and force all the big cars off the road. Everybody has to drive an electric smart car. Yes. So, housing. Speak about transit. What are some of the thoughts that Metro Vancouver Alliance are thinking about transit?
Well, as we did not impose an agenda
yes.
On our members, now that those 4 issues have come onto the floor,
yes.
Starting next month,
yes.
in April 10th, 4 groups, 1 for each of these issues, will be gathering to start developing the agenda that is going to, on how we are going to address those issues.
Well, yes, I was going to ask, agenda on how is what we call strategy. So you don't, what you're saying is Metro Van Alliance doesn't have strategies worked out yet, but that's your task now.
That's the task right now because, of course, we have the general strategies as to how to conduct or call for actions.
Yes.
But it is the success of this is by engaging those who want to work on those particular issues into developing the strategy or helping to redefine the strategy that is already in place.
I was seeing, one of the things I'm seeing pretty regularly, Carlos, I hate to be disparaging or negative about this, but I'll try to turn it into a positive, is that the provincial government and the city government often pay lip service to community involvement. They hold public fora, they hold events, and they take notes and they film it or record it or something. And it's like it's just a PR exercise, quite frankly. I don't know that they're really listening to anybody. And they usually often, or too often, have an agenda of their own, which is unspoken or not very clearly spoken. How are you going to bust that up? How are you going to start to impress on publicly elected people? We call them politicians. How are we going to, those smiling people? How are we going to impress on them that you're not kidding? I mean, this is real, and people want to be part of the process.
To our founding assembly, we invited politicians from all.
Yeah, I saw you had some people show up. Yeah,
and immediately they gave the alliance the recognition that we wanted to have.
Which was?
Which is that we have power to keep, like Mayor Massaro from North Vancouver said, this is a group that definitely will keep our feet under the fire.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what, because as you know.
I saw Jeff was there, Jeff Meggs was there, yeah.
From Saul Alinsky, the whole principle of it is to re-energize, to reorganize, or to strengthen civil society, because what you said is true. Politicians now see us as voters. They don't see us anymore as citizens.
They see us as what?
Voters, the people
as voters. Yeah. No, I think they see you as voters, and one other terrible category, as consumers.
Overall,
instead of citizens.
Yeah.
What happened to the concept of citizen?
It's been lost, and that's one of the overall parts of the agenda here is to strengthen civil society so that we can together, all these institutions, bring kind of back to what it was in the 60s, 70s. We have been losing a lot of grounds ever since the late 70s and so on and so forth. We don't have a political agenda, but we want to bring back the balance between the market economy, government, and civil society.
Very good. Okay, so look, you're not naive in this respect, Carlos, I'm sure. So it won't surprise you if I tell you that recently I asked for volunteers on a little project, and I got a few people to respond. And a week later, I said, okay, who's ready for coffee on the weekend? One person. You know, that's human nature. People at the spur of the moment say, yeah, okay, I'll volunteer. You know, and said 10 of them, you're lucky if 2 will say, okay, now let's do something.
No, and it happens, and I see it on a daily basis in our union.
Yes.
We call for action to,
Yes.
even though those actions are on the self-interest of our members to protect our jobs,
Yes,
and
of course,
benefits, and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
the usual 5 or 6 suspects show up.
Let me ask you a personal question. You're a bus driver.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you get your sense of social justice? How does this come to you?
That comes from home. I grew up in a house where my mother suffers from violence from at the hands of my father. Oh. And since I was a little one, I started to see that, and something told me that that wasn't right. Oh. And as I grew up, of course, I always been looking for ways as to how I can be helpful to help the cause of social justice, because I saw it from the very early years of my life as to how my mother suffered because my dad was a victim of alcoholism. Yeah. So that's where my passion comes from. And it's good that you asked that, because that's what we tell our members, that we all do have that something, a passion within us. Yes. Right, and we need to find out what that passion is, where it comes from, because that will give us the strength to work on just causes. It's
not only the strength; it's the machinery. It's what drives you.
It's the driving force.
I'm so pleased by what you just said. I'm sorry to hear this unhappy, difficulty in your original family, but I'm pleased by your answer, because that's my answer. I grew up in a house that was interested in social justice, and as a child, I sat at the dining room table listening to people talk and listening to the extended family come over and talk about ideas and issues. So I grew up with this sense, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great gift. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that I have kind of gone full circle.
Yes.
Right, because in the country where I came from, the church was always on the side of the government, which was carry out injustices against the civil population.
Yes. Yes,
so I disenfranchised myself from religion. Now, through the METRO VANCOUVER Alliance, I have met wonderful people whom, if I had met them when I was in my early teens, more likely I would not have disenfranchised myself from belonging to a faith.
What area did you grow up in Mexico? What area did you grow up in?
Guatemala.
Oh, in Guatemala. Yeah, a country that for so far too long has had the most crushing poverty.
Yes.
Yeah, we
absolutely.
hope that's changing. We just have a few minutes left. Talk about this issue of social isolation. I mean, that's, if anything is going to be, that's so elusive. It's so hard to get your hands around it.
Well, and we talk about it. We don't see it as as an issue. We see it as a big problem.
Yeah.
Right. But it intertwines with with those 3 issues that we have.
Yeah, with housing, with transportation.
Exactly.
Yeah, poverty.
Yeah.
Sure.
Transit operators, as you know, we work alone out there.
Yeah, yes.
Maybe that's one of the reasons why we are targets to assaults.
Yeah.
Right? Because we are isolated from any other co-workers and management and so on and so forth. We are basically there alone. And when you work at night, the issue becomes even more dramatic. Yeah. So isolation has become a social problem that definitely it will take more work and a much more higher level of commitment to deal with it, because you said it's very complex. It's not something like when transit, we can say to politicians, are you going to commit yourself to fund public transit? Right. but we cannot say something to them as to what the solution for social isolation
Well,
is.
look what Jim Sinclair was able to, the head of BC Unions, was able to do a few years ago, changing the rules about one person working at a gas station late at night, and then it got reversed.
And they got reversed.
Which is an absurdity, because that's a sop to the gas companies.
Yes.
You know, so people's lives are in danger when they go to work late at night.
And it seems to us that it's been the lack of a strong, powerful organization in these communities that have allowed decision-making people to make these decisions that are not favorable to the common good.
Yeah, Carlos, good work. We'll keep abreast of you. We'll keep listening to how it's going. Maybe we'll get you back here in 6 months and get a progress report.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and we will be more than willing to come back and talk as to how our project evolves. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, kids, that's it. Next week, how many times do we read about the wrong person being released on early parole? How many times do we get frightened about these announcements of these releases? Well, risk assessment in the criminal justice system will be the subject, and Dr. Carl Williams, a forensic psychologist who's worked in this area a great many years, is very good at it, will join us. Thanks so much for your joining us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.